Alright, so Amazing Spider-Man issue 75 or Legacy 876 is out, and I want to talk about it today. This is going to be another one of those unscripted videos where you're just going to get my raw thoughts on the comic. And remember, before we start, to like, comment, and subscribe if you're going to enjoy this video and want more Spider-Man content. But let's just get started. To start off with this book, I want to give like my initial reaction when I was finished with it, which was enjoyment. Honestly, I felt like this was a breath of fresh air, coming off of like the very disappointing and lackluster ending to Nick Spencer's Spider-Man. But here, this comic is written by I believe Zeb Wells, and I really enjoyed it. It felt like classic Spider-Man to me. We open up with Peter having a nightmare about like seeing Uncle Ben dead, but like an army of spiders like behind him, and his face is just missing, which is like really creepy. And we get Peter's like inner monologue back again, which I love having that back. And we see that he's still grieving over Harry Lyman. I'm just gonna call it the Harry clone Harry Lyman from now on. And he has like Randy trying to like be his support for him and everything, check up on him, but like Peter just decides to become Spider-Man to push off his grief, which feels like classic Peter to me. I'm glad we're getting back to that and seeing Peter's life as normal again. And you know, he's like going across the city looking for, some crime going on or whatever. And he sees like another Spider-Man and kind of like flips out, which is really funny. Like he says, "Hey, Spider-Verse, like tell me if you're coming," or something like that. But we find out that like it's Ben Reilly, and he's like suited up fighting crime, and like he stops Peter from following him. And the robot says like, "You have an hour to like rethink your life choices." Which is kind of like the theme of this comic, where Peter like thinks about like what's going on in his life, and like the fact that like he wants to put off like having any conversations about it, or stopping to really think about what's going on with him. Later on in the comic we see him talk with Mary Jane, and even then like she's there for him and she wants to support him, but like he just keeps pushing it off, and he keeps deciding to become Spider-Man just so he doesn't have to, feel any pain or any grief about the preceding arc and Harry's death. But we also switch over to Ben Reilly, and we get to see Ben with Janine. Now, I'm not too familiar with Janine. I believe she was in like what Spider-Man Lost Years or Ben Reilly Lost Years, and with J.M. DeMatteis. And I assume she's just like Ben Reilly's Mary Jane. And I like their interaction. I like the fact that she like cut her hair from the previous story, so she looks a little bit less similar to Mary Jane. But I like their interaction. I like what the Beyond Corporation's got going on. They're obviously shady, and I think Ben knows that to even some extent, but he's just like kind of going with it, as we see later in his conversation with Peter. And like speaking of which, we get, Peter and Ben like finally sitting down talking. And I've had this conversation with some people in Discord about what they thought about Ben's character in this conversation. And some people say like he comes off like a real jerk, and I could kind of see that, but I disagree. I think it was pretty like, responsible or good of him to like sit down with Peter and tell Peter, "Hey, these Beyond Corporation people, they are looking for a Spider-Man, and they didn't contact you, they contacted me. They gave me an offer, and it was either I suit up and become Spider-Man, or they choose somebody else, and I took it within my own hands to, do that, so I'm at least like on the inside or whatever what's going on." And he kind of like tells Peter, and it's a little weird, but he says like, "I'm not asking for your permission to be Spider-Man. I'm telling you that I am Spider-Man now. Like we are sharing that." And it's not like he tells Peter, "Oh, you're no longer Spider-Man." It's like they're sharing that role, and they tie it a bit into continuity with like Parker Industries and Peter like selling that off with his fight with Otto Octavius. and like they just picked up the pieces from there, and like I guess the trademark of Spider-Man, which begs the reason when Nick Spencer was writing Spider-Man was like making money with, you know, Jameson's News Corporation. Like, wouldn't that have come up then? But I mean, I guess whatever. It's probably just a plot hole, like first plot hole in the new arc, but whatever. Aside from that, like I like their interaction. It felt like Peter. I don't know too much about Ben, but he does feel like he's like Peter's brother, which is what I always assumed that was their relationship. And it was interesting that like Mary Jane like knew about Ben, and she kind of comes off like she doesn't really like him, which is interesting because as far as I remember in the 90s, like she was cool with him. Now, I mean, I know a lot of stuff like went down towards the end of that with like the Green Goblin originally killing him and like killing Peter and Mary Jane's kid, but I don't really know why she would have some sort of resentment towards him. But aside from that, I mean, we get some really good art I want to talk about for a second from Patrick Gleason. I mean, I really liked his stuff in like Nick Spencer's run, like during like Last Remains, I think it was. Like he drew like a really haunting and good Kindred. But here, I actually really like his like human characters too. Like there's this shot where Peter and Ben meet and they're standing in front of like Peter's college, and I mean it's beautiful. Like the sun, the sky, everything, the colors, really good. And like Peter and Ben's faces, they look really like good, like kind of real. And I like the attention to detail with like Peter looking a lot more like ragged and disheveled, which, you know, represents his inner like turmoil and like what's going on in his life. And like Ben is looking like really, you know, well groomed and professional and all that. And it's represented in like his Spider-Man suit as well, where like we find out he has like all these fancy gadgets, and like they even touch on, which is kind of like a foreshadowing that he has like radiation shielding in his suit as well. And that was cool. I like their interaction and everything. Now we get to like the main event of the book, which is where Peter and Ben end up fighting the UFOs. I have no idea who these villains are. I'm assuming they're like really bottom tier. But like we get a moment where Peter like comes in on the scene and like he starts like throwing out one-liners, and then they're like, oh, not this again. And then you find out Ben is there fighting already, and he already threw out the same one-liners, which is just really good comedy on the part of like Zeb Wells. And the other thing I liked was just like the action. I like the action a bit. Wasn't like a whole lot of it, but it was pretty solid. And I like the design of the UFOs. I like how really colorful and stand out they are. Like one is just like a glowing pink guy. One turns into like gas. The other one's like just a yellow, like, I don't know, weird like sun looking one. And then there's like a rock guy. So, you know, they're pretty cool. And at the end of it, there's like this weird like radioactive explosion or something like that, and Peter gets caught in it, and there we get the payoff with Ben has radiation shielding in his suit, so he's able to survive and not like take any damage, while his spider sense went off. He wasn't able to get out of the way of like the radiation, so it looks like the radiation is poisoning him, and we're left on a cliffhanger with that. And with the preview, we see Peter in a hospital bed with Mary Jane looking over him. So overall, I really enjoyed this comic. I don't really throw out grades, but if I throw out a grade, I give it like a B+, A-. I think it's a really good start to the next era of Spider-Man. And we know this arc is going on for like about the next 6 months, and it's going to be 3 times a month. So, I mean, get your wallets ready, because that's going to be a lot. But I'm excited for this. I never read like Ben Reilly as Spider-Man, and this is like the first time I'm picking up a run like at the beginning for the first time, because with which is the first run I started reading currently on Spider-Man, I like kind of got into it towards like Hunted, and I went back and read the previous issues. But now it's pretty exciting being like a first time reader of like a new run. But yeah, I enjoyed it. There's a couple backup stories. There's one with the Daughters of the Dragon, Colleen Wing and Misty Knight, and they meet Ben Reilly. I assume they met before somewhere. I think it was like an Iron Man book that Ben was in recently. And I think in the previews they show up a bit, so I'm guessing they're going to team up a couple times. And aside from that, we get a little bit of teasing for the future of this run where we see Dr. Ashley Kafka and Ravencroft, and this I can't remember the guy's name. It's like a weird name, but like the shady like black scientist guy who works with Beyond Corporation. He like throws Ben Reilly's like information down on the table and like tells her like, hey, how about you help me with like this guy's rehabilitation? I know you guys like clones or whatever, so this guy's pretty interesting. And then she's like, you have no idea. And I guess they're also experimenting on Electro, which is weird, but okay. So I don't know where that's going. I'm interested, but yeah, I think this book is really good. I think if you haven't really liked the end of Spencer's run, I would recommend picking this up, just seeing how you feel about it. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this review, and remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, peace out.